have been scheduled with congressional leaders to end the impasse. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
It is day 20 of the partial government shutdown, and negotiations appear stalled as workers still on the job are bracing to miss the first payday of the shutdown tomorrow. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says that Democrats are playing politics and have supported funding and barriers in the past.
Remember, we are in this shutdown because it takes 60 votes in the Senate. Senator Schumer decided to have a shutdown. We are hurting the American public. The president actually compromised, gone to steel slates instead of concrete, which the Democrats had asked for. The president has found common ground. It is the Democrats that continue to argue to try to say there's not a crisis. President Obama in 2014 called the border a major crisis, a humanitarian crisis.
Right. President Trump has requested roughly $5 billion for additional border security, including the wall. The Florida election official at the center of last year's recount controversy may have had her own rights violated when the state's then governor suspended her from her position. Eben Brown reports.
Brenda Snipes became the face of what many criticized as either corruption or incompetence in Broward County, Florida, the nexus of vote-counting mishaps in last November's election for governor and U.S. Senate. Recounts were botched, and Governor Rick Scott ordered her suspended, a move over which Snipes, Broward's elections chief and elected officer herself, sued. Now, a federal judge says that suspension was wrong, that she was given no chance to explain herself fairly. The judge orders newly inaugurated Governor Rick Scott give Snipes that hearing. In Miami, Eben Brown, Fox News.
The union for the Los Angeles Unified School District has not reached a deal, and time is running out to keep tens of thousands of teachers on the job. Teachers want a serious deal by Monday, or they will walk off the job. Superintendent Austin Boatner says the district is trying desperately to secure additional funding to keep schools open.
We asked for their help. We don't want to strike. We asked for our legislator to help us, to be part of these conversations, because they represent the same constituents that we serve in schools.
Fox News commentator Tucker Carlson is saying things that even some conservatives are having a problem with. Steve Jordahl reports some, though, say he's right.
The data are clear, says Carlson. Boys raised without their fathers are a terrible risk, and the breakup of the family is a national disaster. No one really argues those points, but the reason for the failures...
Falling male wages certainly play a role. When men make less than women in their potential dating pool, women tend to consider them less attractive marriage partners. Fewer men marry, more children are born out of wedlock. America's middle class is in decline because middle-class American families are declining. The major driver of family collapse is simple economics.
Now, that's not setting well with some free market conservatives who say the breakdown of the family is a moral issue, not a policy one. Want to lower the out-of-wedlock birth rate? Get married or be chaste. Yes, but, says Brad Wilcox of the National Marriage Project.
Conservatives have, I think, not sufficiently attentive to the ways in which bad public policies and excesses with the market have hurt American families.
The falling wages that Carlson talks about are hitting middle-income earners hardest. Single parents, particularly moms, often get more money from entitlement programs than do their married peers.
Among the working class in the last 30 years, we've seen dramatic declines in marriage, dramatic increases in divorce. And I don't think you can argue that there's just been some kind of eruption of personal irresponsibility.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
Please call your senators today. It's time to put an end to the liberals' filibuster. Tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood now. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
My Democratic colleagues are operating purely on political spite directed at the President of the United States.
This is ridiculous and it's cruel. And it needs to end now, right now.
If he was going to get some border wall, I think the president would be there. Listen, The entire time these negotiations have been going on, it has been the president bringing offers to the Democrats. The Democrats have not one time made any counteroffer back.
Unity of the Republican Party. It's really a beautiful thing to see. I don't think there'll be any breakaway because they know we need border security and we have to have it.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are really excited to continue our Preborn Partnership Week. Let me give you those numbers so you can call in and join with us. We've met our goal. Our goal was 2,000 ultrasounds provided. But remember, the statistic is that out of every ultrasound that's provided, when you group them together and take the total, 80% of the women choose life. So 20% do not. So in order to save 2,000 lives, we want to keep pushing. We want to get even more going on here today, and we're excited about that. So here are the numbers to call: 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or you can go to afr.net, and you can just check in over there at afr.net. I did mine yesterday live on the air. I donated to provide a free ultrasound to a woman who is abortion-minded. And I'm so excited about now, it'll be my first time donating, so I'll get my information and materials in the mail. And this will be something that I can share with the kids and my husband, and we can really pray over the work that Preborn is doing, because it's a partnership beyond just giving the money. And so that's why we're talking to you about it, our loyal, valued listening audience. And if I can just take a second, I want to say thanks. Thank you to AFR listeners for helping us meet the goal. But I also just want to say you guys are awesome. You're awesome. I don't know if you've heard that today, if anyone's giving you a pat on the back or, a hey, you're awesome or a thumbs up. But I'm giving you one now. I'm continually amazed in my short time being here at Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio and how responsive the listening audience is. And not that I had any expectations that the audience wouldn't be, but I've just seen over and over again how the listening audience here doesn't just respond. You go above and beyond whatever is asked. And I think that's something that it's commendable. It shows how interested the listening audience is in advancing the kingdom and the gospel. And I just think it's fantastic. I think you are fantastic. So thank you so much for helping us to meet our goal. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about preborn. What is it? Well, in short, we have almost 1 million babies aborted per year, and the number would be more if it weren't for preborn and the work that they do in providing free ultrasounds to abortion-minded moms in pregnancy resource centers across the country. They provide the ultrasound free of charge, which means they're providing the machine, the training, everything, and they're doing that with your help. $28 gets one woman a free ultrasound. $140 gets 5 free ultrasounds. But here's the best part. The results are already tabulated, so you don't have to be concerned, hey, what's the overhead administrative cost? 0. There is no overhead administrative cost. All there is whatever dollar you give goes straight to providing these ultrasounds. 340,000 women have been counseled, and 73,600 babies have been saved. That's pretty fantastic. So let's continue on with what we're doing at the partnership. Fantastic. 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. And you can donate online at afr.net. And we continue to be grateful and really kind of blown away by the awesomeness of our audience here. We're so excited. So today on the show, we're going to speak to Erielle Davidson. She is saying, the question is, I think everybody has it on their mind, who's going to cave first? Will it be President Trump, the GOP, or Pelosi and the Democrats? Who's going to actually, blank, cry uncle, give in, yield, whatever the terminology is that you prefer? Who's going to do it? And I tend to think that the president understands the seriousness of this issue, just judging by the speech that he gave and some comments that he's made since then. And we'll be hearing some of those. He had a really fun interaction with a reporter where the reporter tried to get froggy with him, and he just turned it back on the reporter, and it was classic Donald Trump, really in his element. And I love that because they're not having the press briefings to spare Sarah Huckabee Sanders some of the nastiness from Jim Acosta and his crew of bad actors. The president is now, whenever he steps out to Marine One, especially while this crisis is going on and the border shutdown is in effect, he's been commenting, hey, let me tell you what's on my mind. And then he's been taking some questions. That, to me, is indicative of his seriousness on this issue. Apparently there's word on the street, and who knows if it's valid or not. Remember, we're always getting stuff back channel, front channel. No one ever claims any of these comments, that the president really wasn't that excited about doing the speech, the Oval Office address the other night. And it could be because he knew there was going to be a rebuttal by the Democrats. But today on the show, in addition to speaking to Erielle, who is a frequent guest on the program, I'm so excited. She comes over to us from the Federalist. We also have some comments from the president before he got on Marine One this morning on his way to the little Air Force One, which he flew down to McAllen, Texas. And he's going to be on the border doing what presidents have to do when they find out that there's an obstructionist party, there's an obstructionist party in effect in Washington, and they don't even care about their constituents. So we're going to talk about that. And I actually have something in mind as a reasoning behind, because we keep pointing out, as we often do, that in the past, Democrats have not only voted for millions of dollars, but they've supported border wall, border funding, border technology, more agents, et cetera, et cetera. And there's been a change of late that they don't support it. They're not willing to provide $1. Part of it is Trump derangement syndrome. They hate the president, but there's something else at play. So we'll discuss that as well. And of course, we'll take your calls. So right now, I want to talk a little bit. We're still in the Psalms, you guys. We're still in the Psalms because I'm finding them very encouraging. And I have to say, if you're feeling discouraged about all of this, and you're thinking to yourself, it's Debbie Downerville, everybody's being so negative. I'm presenting the information, but I am not negative in any way, shape, or fashion. The same way that we flourished in the Obama years when there was a lot of economic malaise around the country, but many people that I know, almost everyone I know, did very well. Christians, Bible-believing Christians who put their trust in the Lord and not in President Obama. They didn't see President Obama as their savior. The situation is no different now. And that's no dig against President Trump. It's just a statement of fact. If your true source is God Almighty and his son, Jesus Christ, and Holy Spirit, the triune God, then all of these things, the winds may blow, anything can happen, but you're firm, you're rooted, you're grounded, you're standing on the rock. You're excited about the future because you know the end of the story. You know how this thing all goes down in the end. We just have to walk it out. So it's frustrating, sure, but I'm not discouraged in the least, not even slightly discouraged, even though on the surface it looks like the president is in an impossible position. And I know there's a piece out there over at Hot Air. One of the writers over there talked about, are you prepared? Well, it might not be at Hot Air. I've been all over the internet this morning. Are we prepared for a President Kamala Harris, declaring a national emergency over climate change? Well, I don't know. Are we? She may very well do something like that if she were elected president, because she's kind of like a dictator. And climate change, there's no provision for regulating climate change in the Constitution, as there is for regulating the border and maintaining national sovereignty. Notice that. I know that it doesn't matter what the Constitution says, it doesn't matter what rules are, but just notice that. So there's a rebuttal to every one of these assertions, but it's always coming from a place of, we know our source. Our source is not Barack Obama. It wasn't him. It's not Donald Trump. We support the president. Sometimes he drives us batty, but he's the president. We're praying for him, just like we hopefully prayed for President Obama. We want to acknowledge the scripture that says that the head of the king is turned by God. He turns it whichever way he would have it to go. So we have to acknowledge that. If we believe that, then we know there's no reason for us to be up or down because of the news that we see. We should be continually refilling our joy cups by reading our scripture and singing praise and worship songs and fellowshipping with believers and serving. That's the way we can keep ourselves on an even keel and not be blown hither and thither because of whatever we're seeing in the news or in the media. So I read just a little bit of this yesterday, and I'm still on it because it's that good. Do not fret because of those who are evil, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. And I know there are people listening in our audience who you're thinking, that's me, I need some vindication. Well, God has it for you. It says, I'll repeat, verse 6, he will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn. That means no one will miss the fact that you're being rewarded. Your enemies will see it, and your friends will see it, and your family will see it. It will be clear to them that your righteousness is being rewarded. And your vindication will also shine like the noonday sun. Noonday sun is high and hot, and nobody can miss it. You can't hide from it unless you go indoors. That is how your vindication will shine and be seen around about by those who previously thought you to be guilty or plotted against you, your enemies. That's what this is saying to us. Be still before the Lord, verse 7, and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. We aren't to fret. We are not to be blown about. We're not to be emotionally unstable. Verse 9, for those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while and the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found. But the meek will inherit the land and enjoy peace and prosperity. I encourage you, I just stopped there at verse 11. Go through and read the rest of that psalm and meditate on it, and it will lift your spirits. And I'm encouraging you in this way. You know, if you're not discouraged right now, awesome, that's great. But I can feel the discouragement creeping on me if my job is to read, watch, and listen to the news. And so listening to it and hearing an absolute mantra, and I believe we're going to have that audio for you tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to be able to listen to this audio of the Democrats literally parroting each other. And so you watch that and you're like, wow, what in the world is, like, what is going on? The dishonesty, it's rampant. It is, but God is greater. So we have nothing to fear. We have nothing to concern ourselves about with worry and doubt. Instead, making every petition known to God and trusting him for the outcome. So right now I want to listen to, as we're closing out this first segment, President Trump challenging a reporter on signing the Democrats' shutdown bills. And I love this audio clip. I think it's awesome the way he turned it back around on this reporter. But the reporter never answered the question. Still, it was great audio. It's number one.
Hey, John. No, seriously, John, do you think I should just sign?
Well, the argument is...
Tell me.
Sign these bills that have nothing to do with
John,
border security.
you think I should just sign?
I'm saying that if you sign that, these workers can start getting paid. The government can start...
So you would do that if you were in my position, you'd do that?
I'm not in your position. I'm asking you if that's something you...
I'm asking you, would you do that if you were in my position? Because if you would do that, you should never be in this position. Because you'd never get anything done. Goodbye, everybody.
It was a total smack, and they laughed because they knew it was the truth. He delivered the truth to them. And I want to make this other point, and there's so many other things for us to get to today on the show. I promise you, I just have so much. There's landowners who are along the southern border where the wall would be installed, where there is no wall right now. And I don't know if they're Democrats or what their problem is, but they don't want wall on their land. And I use the quote fingers because their land is the border of the United States. So if there was ever a clear use for eminent domain, it would be to build a border on someone else's land to protect the country. Well, Jazz Shaw actually has an idea. Build the border wall and put their property on the outside of it. So they're still in America, but they're on the outside of our physical border wall because they don't want it on their property. And then they want to come into the interior of the United States. They're still Americans. They can still vote. They can still come and go, but they have to come through a lawful entry point. And you put one every so often so they don't have to travel. You know, it's not an undue burden, but put their property on the outside. So they'd be in America, but still bordering Mexico, you know, still open border on their end, but on our side, inside their property line, we'd have protection. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. I love it. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Erielle Davidson and so much more. Stay there.
This month marks 46 years of Roe v. Wade. The Ministry of Preborn is seeking heroes who will partner with them to give the gift of life to babies in crisis. How? By providing free ultrasounds. When an abortion-minded mother sees her baby on ultrasound and hears the heartbeat, she's 80% more likely to choose life.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry. and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
Would you join Urban Family Talk and the Ministry of Preborn in helping to give life to 2,000 babies this January? For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, dial 877-616-2396. That's 877-616-2396. Or visit afr.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. You know, some people wouldn't know the truth if it bit them on the nose. It seems as if everybody is lying. I know, not everybody's lying, but it feels that way. I've found even in my own life that I've said things off the cuff in a certain way that when I thought about it later, I said, that wasn't completely truthful. It's there, and lying is awful. In Acts chapter 5, there's a tragic story of a couple who want to look good, so they decide to lie. It's the story of Ananias and Sapphira. They sell a piece of property, bring some of the money and lay it at Peter's feet, pretending it's the total sum they received from the sale. Listen to what happens in Acts chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? Why is it that you have contrived this deed in your heart? You have not lied to men, but to God. When Ananias heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last. A little later on, his wife came up, and she held to the same story. The same thing happened to her, too. She dropped dead right on the spot. Can you imagine what would happen today if every time a Christian told a lie, he dropped dead? We'd be speaking in terms of Christianity in the past tense. I believe the point of Acts chapter 5 is that God is serious. He is serious about telling the truth, and it's never, ever right to lie. Here's what I want you to remember today. Let's ask God to help us to be totally truthful. Let's search our hearts and repent of any lies or deception.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org. Join Crawford tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
All right, thank you so much for being with us today. It's my pleasure always to speak to our next guest. She's one of my favorites. She has been on the program and provided expert analysis on numerous occasions, and today is no different. Can't wait to hear her take on what's going on with the president and the border fight. It's Erielle Davidson. She's a contributor to the Federalist and good friend of the show. Erielle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Stacey. Always a pleasure to come on your show.
You know, so just hit me with it. Who's going to cave? Because I'm thinking President Trump looks pretty strong. I also think the longer this goes on, the less people are going to say it's only his fault. The more people are going to say, well, why can't they just give him a little bit of money? Or why can't they just give him, why can't they negotiate at all? It's going to become clear that really he's trying. He's even willing to consider some things I'm not okay with. Where do you see this going?
You know, I think it's what I've heard a lot of people say, and I do agree with this take, is that it seems like both sides think that they're winning. And because both sides think that they're winning, it doesn't seem like either side is going to cave. But I do think that if I had to pick right now in the moment, I would say that the Democrats are probably more likely to cave because I think they have a weaker case. If you look at sort of what they're arguing for, they say they support border security, but they have absolutely no interest in putting any money towards a wall. And so you're prompted to ask, well, what alternatives have they presented to us? And they really haven't presented anything of substance. And that, to me, is what's more concerning. And so I think you're absolutely right that as this drags on, people are going to start to see that, wait a minute, if they say they care about border security, let's see what their alternatives are. And they haven't really presented any. Nothing of substance that I can see. They haven't, Erielle. And so if you're just tuning in to the show, welcome. Thank you for being here with us on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We're speaking with Erielle Davidson, contributor to the Federalist. And I want to point out, and I think what I'll do is for my homework tonight after the show is I'll try to find everything I can of Democrats recently saying that border barriers are okay. Now, I do have a little running list. I've started a little ahead, so maybe it's not quite all homework for tonight. But we have Democratic Representative Sherry Bustos saying a border wall is fine. Senator Cardin saying certainly you need barriers and we support barriers. Senator Jeff Merkley saying that some barriers are useful on the border.
Do you think some of these statements by these elected officials could be a result of regular dyed-in-the-wool donors and Democrats calling their office and saying, what are you doing? That how can Democrats oppose a border wall or our national sovereignty?
I think they're getting calls, but I think they're getting calls from their constituents. I think that there's, a large fraction of the country that sort of sees the reasonability of Trump's proposal. I think there are a lot of people that care deeply about border security, both on the right and the left, but you're not seeing that necessarily represented in how the Democrats are behaving. I think the Democrats, especially in the House, are doing a lot of showboating, and that's they're enjoying this moment in the spotlight, and I think they're taking tremendous satisfaction from being able to deprive Trump of the ability to follow through on one of his biggest campaign promises. And I think that's what this boils down to. I don't think that for the Democrats this really is about spending, because I can think of so many other silly, not even other silly, but actually silly, frivolous spending items that they've approved, right, in the past in terms of our national budget. So for them to put their, foot in the sand here, I think a lot of this has to do with just being able to deprive Trump of the ability to follow through on his campaign promise.
I'm
think
so
that's
glad.
Really what this is about.
So Erielle, I agree with you. I'm so glad you mentioned that, though, because there's a list out, and none other than Reuters, okay, hardly a left-leaning or hardly a right-leaning organization. They do not like Donald Trump, but Reuters actually has a list over at their site, things Democrats have funded that cost more than the border wall. I'll just name a few off just so people can kind of get their kicks.
Please do.
Rural Utility Service. This program costs taxpayers $8.2 billion a year. Sugar subsidies, $6 billion. Community development grants. And I know some of these things are popular, so I'm not asserting their validity. I'm just saying they don't even argue about funding them. $15 billion over 5 years for community development grants. United Nations. We are the United Nations' largest contributor. And so we give $10 billion a year. We could save $12.5 billion a year over 10 years if we just, reduce the amount that we share. Amtrak, subsidies over the next 5 years cost $9.7 billion. And my favorite on the list, unused real estate, Erielle. We have, in fiscal year 26, 3,120 buildings that are vacant. And we pay about $15 billion every 5 years to maintain those thousands of buildings that we own but do not use. The federal government, United States government. So,
that's staggering.
Just take a little of each of those funds. Let's say they decided to sell 300 buildings and, reduce community grants, I'm not talking about crazy things. I have tons of great ideas. I'm a red line budget person. If you got problems, start with a red pen and you can fix your problems. If we did any of these things, if we reduced everything by 10%, we'd have more than enough to do the wall. But I don't think it's about money. Do you?
No, I don't. I think this is an emotional battle. This is about opposing Trump. This is about I think the Democrats see an opportunity to agree for once, because you probably have noticed that there are some fractures in the Democrats, and, in terms of the progressives versus the establishment. And so I do think that Nancy Pelosi sees an opportunity here to get the younger elements of her party to coalesce around her. And so she is going to be tough on this. Same thing with Chuck Schumer. I think they really are trying to use this as a poker chip to get the progressives on their side, because it has been sort of contentious within the Democratic Party right now.
It was really hard for her to get reelected, or I shouldn't say reelected, but she wanted the speakership, and everybody who was an establishment person who'd been there for decades, they were all like, yeah, Nancy's the one for the job. And everybody knew was like, no, we want somebody progressive, which Nancy and you and, for you and me, Erielle, Nancy's pretty progressive. But for them, she's not radical enough. So you're right about the fractures. What do you say to this? It's an article that's floating around now where Marco Rubio is saying, look, if you're okay with President Trump signing a national emergency to get the wall done, be prepared for Kamala Harris to sign some kind of national emergency when she's the president, which would basically force the entire country into climate change.
Force the country into what?
Into supporting climate change legislation, like all the boondoggles that have to do with that.
Right. So, I think Marco Rubio isn't totally off base. Look, if we're going to pull some kind of maneuver here, we have to be prepared for the possibility that if the other side's in power, they might do the same as well. That was what happened with Harry Reid and the nuclear option. We have to be prepared for that to possibly take place. That being said, I think Trump might be able to make a very strong case for himself about declaring this a national emergency. I mean, look, the issue is that what that would at least do do is it would force the Democrats to recognize that there is actually a crisis. And I don't disagree with Trump with saying that there is a crisis at the border. I think if you look at the various towns particularly across the Midwest that have been totally decimated by opioid epidemic, I think there's a very fair and valid argument to be made that there is a crisis on our borders. It's just sort of that those living on the coast are pretty insulated from it. And so what I do think that Trump, declaring this to be a crisis, what I do think it would do is it would sort of expose how far removed the coastal areas are from what's actually going down on the ground. And that's what I think has been most illuminating about seeing all the reporting coming out is that, we don't have a lot of reporters who are living near the border in Texas. We don't have a lot of reporters who are living in central Ohio. We don't have a lot of reporters who are living on the ground experiencing firsthand sort of the implications or the devastation that might result from illegal immigration.
That's an excellent point. And I think, so we played a little bit of audio in the first segment of a reporter saying, why don't you just sign one? You're signing all these bills that have nothing to do with border or with the shutdown. Why don't you just sign one of the bills that's proposed by the Democrats? And he turned it around on him and said, would you sign it? A lot of these reporters are so Beltway and Acela corridor bound that when they go out into any part, like even rural Virginia, this is not, thousands of miles away. This is 2 hours by car. They're in rural Virginia. Their reaction is, oh, this is disgusting. Look at these people. Look, it's such a shock for them to see how we have multiple tens of millions of Americans who do not live in the Acela corridor or on the East Coast, writ large, the parts we think of the major cities, or in California. So it's kind of amazing that they're this insulated and out of touch with regular Americans.
Oh, absolutely. And this is sort of why, Stacey, this goes back to why it was such a shock when President Trump won the election, was because there was this huge divide that just really reporters hadn't really addressed or bothered to address. I think Selena Zito has done a fantastic job. I believe she's at the Washington Examiner, if I'm not mistaken. She's done a tremendous amount of reporting on sort of this gap between, the Beltway reporters and what's going on in the rest of America.
I find it interesting because there are ways in which we can continue that kind of separation. Like if you have health insurance, which these reporters do, obviously, and most well-to-do liberals, they don't just have insurance. They're often involved in the kind of boutique concierge service where they pay their doctor $1,200 or $1,500 or $2,000 a year, and that doctor sees them privately in their home, so they don't even go to doctor's offices. So there are ways to limit your exposure to people who aren't like yourself. And in our kind of gig, customized Starbucks economy, it is becoming more and more. It's not just easy, it's prevalent, like Instacart. This is something that's taking the grocery stores around here in our area by storm, and it's probably because we're the last ones to get stuff because we're in the Midwest. So everyone else is already using Instacart, which means you would normally be at the grocery store shopping for food, bumping into people who are not like yourself, because a grocery store is going to be in your neighborhood, but anyone can shop there. You don't even have to do that anymore. With the advent of Amazon, you can have anything you need, clothes, shoes, anything, food, pantry items, delivered to you. Instacart can get you your actual fresh grocery items. You can choose them and have them brought to your house. So you are able to really control the kinds of people that you bump into. And I think it's interesting, but I think it's also becoming a danger for our society that people who write about the news, who report the news, who have such a huge impact on what people think and believe, have chosen to cordon themselves off so they never bump into anyone who doesn't think, act, and even breathe like they do, the yoga type aficionados, all of that.
No, I agree with you. I think this is something that, I believe the author's name is Robert Putnam. He wrote a whole book on bowling alone and how we have a decrease in social capital, that we're just not as interconnected as a society. So even, the urban versus suburban rural divide is becoming more dramatic. I think that there's also an argument to be made that just in general, social capital is decreasing. You're right. We're not going to social clubs anymore. We're not running into our neighbors in the grocery store. We're not going to the mall. We're not engaging in, stepping outside our homes to do more things. We're able to do a lot just via the internet. And so I do think that that's leading to not just large divisions within America, but also to smaller divisions within society itself.
I also think, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I am in no way, I've said this before, but I'll just say it again for the good of the order. I'm not xenophobic. I'm not afraid of any people, people group or anything like that. And I have zero animus towards Hispanics. In fact, a close, dear friend of our family, someone that we not only work with him, but we celebrate the milestones in his family. When he had his first grandchild, we celebrated that. He's an immigrant. He's a recent immigrant himself. And we love that family. And we know other people who are, Latin or Hispanic or whatever the allowed term is. So there's nothing about that I have a problem with. I do, however, have a problem with people insisting that I decide whether or not I want to do something in English or Spanish, or I would have the same problem if it were French or Haitian. I think the default language in America should be English because that is our native tongue. And so there's a lot of this. It's like people will say, well, if you don't want to spend time around, people who speak Spanish, if you don't want to speak Spanish at Walmart, or if that's not your thing, then you're xenophobic or you hate them. That's not it at all. I like to put it the other way, Erielle. If you use Instacart and Amazon and different services to prevent you from understanding that the majority of the shoppers at any place at any given time have now transitioned from being Americans to foreign-born speakers, then you're the one who actually has some xenophobia because you don't even want to be around those people. It's not that I'm fine with being there. I just want to speak English. I just want everything in English. They don't even want to be there. Isn't the xenophobia really over on the other side that's advocating for these policies?
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of the level of insulation that takes place, and sort of just the idea that those who are living in coastal areas tend to be more insulated from problems that are existing beyond the cities themselves, right? And so I do think that this phenomenon you're describing isn't far off when we talk about the immigration issues. I do think that the English language, it's just a matter of convenience. I think that a lot of people just appreciate not having to go through the rigor or the steps of trying to determine, well, is it English or Spanish? I think you're right. There's a convenience factor associated with it, and we live in the age of convenience, right?
Right.
And I do think what's sort of upsetting, I think, about the entire immigration debate is that, every time we discuss immigration, we always are paying credence to the notion that, yes, we consider economics, but we also consider social fabric, and we consider, how able are we to assimilate large groups of people from other countries. And in fact, the United States does a fantastic job of that. But we do that because immigration is highly regulated, and we are very cognizant of the different ratios needed to ensure that people are able to assimilate into society. A lot of Europe's issues right now in terms of assimilation are related to the fact that they haven't really given thought to social fabric. They haven't really given a thought to how can you, integrate large people from other areas into the population when your base population is pretty small. And so I do think that what is sort of saddening about this immigration conversation is become really unintellectual when the reality is, and always has been, is that immigration has always been a question of, is it what's best in our economic interest? What's best for maintaining the social fabric of the United States? Immigrants do make the United States great, but so does our ability to integrate immigrants. And that's really a product of a host of other factors, including, ratios of people from different countries. And so I do think that, when we talk about immigration, we should be paying much more attention to that. And the Democrats just don't want to hear it. They just call you a xenophobe. You say something like that. So
they do, and taking the comments out of context. Because if I was xenophobic, the language that I would have here on this program would be very different. And I kind of feel like if I was xenophobic, I wouldn't be able to be on here. Like I think
absolutely
it wouldn't be someplace where they would welcome me here. Erielle Davidson,
absolutely.
Contributor to the Federalist. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy New Year. Thanks for coming on today.
Happy New Year. Thanks so much, Stacey.
All right. Talk to you again soon. We will be back with more, and we'll take your calls, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Be right back.
Can solid teamwork building principles apply to all of life? Here's Tony Dungy, author of The Soul of a Team, with today's uncommon moment.
I remember a time when the Colts were preparing for the college draft and needed to choose between two defensive players. One was big, strong, and dominant on the field. The other had great speed but was undersized. Both were exceptional college players. Yet we had some questions about the first player's attitude and commitment. So we brought in 3 of his college teammates and asked each of them, if we brought you here, which of your teammates would you want to have on our team as well? None of them named the player we were considering. We ended up drafting the second player, and he was a good choice. When you're selfless, you'll earn the respect of your teammates.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of The Soul of a Team, from Tyndale House. More at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. In 1 Samuel 21, we see David fleeing from King Saul. David uses every trick in the book to preserve his own life, from eating the priest's holy showbread to lying about why he is in the vicinity. At one point, David pretends to be insane, thinking that doing so will prevent angry servants from killing him. Emulating these deceptions are not the point of David's story. Being in fear for his life made him do things he would not normally do. But the story doesn't end there. David wrote Psalm 34 during this difficult time, singing, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." This is a beautiful way of describing the true nature of walking with God. In the low times, when all have forsaken you, continue to bless the Lord. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Congratulations, new members of the House and Senate. You are no longer Washington outsiders. You're now incumbents. Are you part of the swamp, the deep state, the establishment? Unclear. But you are certainly now inside the Beltway. Most who come to Washington contend they won't go native. There's merit in that. But consider this quotation from Katharine Graham, the longtime publisher of the Washington Post. When it comes to Washington, most people tend to think first of politics. But Washington is also a geographic and physical place. It is, for instance, one of the few cities in the world where you can talk endlessly about trees. Close quote. The House is host to a prodigiously large class. Such big classes are prone to greenhorn mistakes, everything from minor stumbles to major scandals. And it's hard for freshmen to get attention, especially those not named New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. One surefire way to garner press, just hours after you're sworn in, use a profane pronoun when referring to the President of the United States. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacey on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
They're not talking about the Democrats folding. For instance, this morning a number of people came out and said you do need very strong border security, and that includes a wall or whatever it is. A number of Democrats said that, but people don't like to report on it. We have tremendous unity in the Republican Party. It's really a beautiful thing to see. I don't think there'll be any breakaway because they know we need border security and we have to have it. And the only way you're going to have border security, there's only one way. You can have all the technology in the world. I'm a professional in technology. But if you don't have a steel barrier or a wall of some kind, strong, powerful, you're going to have human trafficking. You're going to have drugs pouring across the border. You're going to have MS-13 and the gangs coming in. And we've done record apprehensions. We're doing a great job. But we need help. If we have the wall, we could have far fewer people working in terms of border security and doing an even better job. So if we had the wall, we could have a tremendous saving. I really believe the steel barrier or wall would pay for itself every 3 or 4 months and maybe even better than that in terms of overall.
He's right. The president is right, and that's who you were listening to. He was outside of Marine One, and he was taking some questions from reporters, and he took the time to share that bit of information to support the president's assertion. We also talk about foreign aid on this program quite a bit. American taxpayers currently spend more than $50 billion in a year helping develop foreign countries. Much of the recipients, many of them are not known for being our closest allies. You've got Egypt, South Sudan, Uganda, South Africa, Russia, Congo, Sudan, and Zambia, which raises the question of what we're actually receiving for that money. These are not our allies. They refuse to vote with us at the UN. They don't send their best people to our country as immigrants, and we still pay them billions of dollars a year. Why? Waste, fraud, and abuse. GAO estimates taxpayers are spending about $137 billion annually on payment errors. That covers all manner of waste, fraud, and abuse within Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Much of that driven by illegal immigration because people steal or create fake Social Security numbers and receive payments from the government because they're here in the country illegally and they want to be paid. We have many different ways to fix these problems. Just a couple more things that the Democrats don't care about reauthorizing year after year after year. Northwest University has received more than $3 million in annual National Institute of Health grants to watch hamster fights. I'll say that again. $3 million paid to Northwestern University by NIH so that the people there who are researchers can watch hamsters fight. Some of the experiments involve injecting the hamsters with steroids, then putting another hamster in the cage to see if the drugged rodents are more aggressive when protecting their territory. The program has been halted only because animal rights activists want it stopped because they don't think hamsters should be forced to fight, not because it's wasting money. I'm just, I know this has to be flabbergasting, but we need these facts so that we can deal with the nincompoops who are currently saying this is about money, yada, yada, yada. The feds also spend just over $1 million a year training social justice to math teachers. The government spends at least $518,000 in federal grants to study how cocaine affects the sexual behavior of Japanese quails. You heard me right. They're giving birds cocaine to see what it does to their intimacy ratios. Federal Register is legally required to be printed daily. It's distributed to congressional offices. Most of them never read it. All of the information is available online. Stopping this unnecessary printing would save $1 million a year. Now, for those who understand that $1 million is a pittance in a multiple trillion dollar annual budget, that's true. But if you understand that, then you must understand that money stacks up. And the way to wealth and prosperity is to stack money up, not to, well, I am not going to spend money on that. It's not just a national problem. It's a personal problem as well. We Americans feel that, well, saving $5 here really doesn't add up. Yes, it does. Saving $1 million here or there in the federal budget doesn't add up. Actually, it does. If you stack enough millions up together, you get $1 billion. Am I right? That's how wealthy people get wealthy. Jeff Bezos did not become a multiple billionaire and one of the richest people on the planet by saying, well, me and my wife can afford to do this or that, outside of our budget. We just need to keep spending that. We need to keep burning that. Let's burn through some money. No, he can burn through money now, but he's got so much of it. And I bet you, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts, actual dollars, and real donuts, because Krispy Kremes, I never eat them anymore. I'm willing to bet that he watches his money even more tightly now than he did back when he was, running a hedge fund or working at, he used to work at Barnes & Noble's. He didn't just get there overnight. So if that concept applies to Jeff Bezos and his billions, and it applies to a family in Missouri that's working and earning the median for a family of four, $58,000 a year, and they're watching their pennies and they have a few $100,000 saved up, then it definitely applies to our federal government and our budget. It's not about money. We know it's not that we don't have the money, but this just puts the nail in the coffin for these Democrats who are just out there lying through their teeth about why they don't want to fund this wall. It has nothing to do with the money, everything to do with not wanting to give the president a win, as Erielle said, not wanting to give him anything because they hate him and they hate his supporters, and also the open borders serve their purposes. Voters who don't hold them accountable for their failures. Americans are too prone to say, weren't you the one who, proposed that we do Obamacare, and I'm not only not saving $2,500 a year, I'm paying 5 times as much, and I don't have any providers? Americans will say that to you. An illegal immigrant who can't speak English just wants to get paid and live here and get checks. And, I know sometimes when people plain speak the truth, it's offensive. It causes snowflakes to spin and melt. I'm not here for the snowflakes. I'm here for people who want real news and information, Christian worldview, biblical perspective, the unvarnished truth. And I'm actually much nicer about saying it than I could be because I'm a professional. Let's leave it at that. All right, let's go to the phones. Jacob in Alabama. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on today.
How you doing, Sister Stacy?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Oh, fantastic. I got a ton of scriptures, but I'm only going to give you a couple because I know this is what the Lord wants you to have. First of all, instead of Psalm 37, Psalm 73 is for you because it shows you basically what it boils down to what's going to happen to the Democratic Party. And just stay tuned. The other thing is we did not elect Donald Trump. Donald Trump, when he brought the Jerusalem to be the capital and acknowledged it, the people over there, the first thing they said, well, he's like Cyrus. And we didn't go to the scriptures and read about Cyrus. He called Cyrus a pagan king that doesn't know him. He called him my anointed. Donald Trump is an anointed choice of the Lord, just like Saul was. And now, Donald Trump ain't killed no Christians. He used Saul to write 3/4 of the New Testament. He's using Donald Trump like Cyrus to rebuild the wall. That would be Isaiah 44:28 and Isaiah 45:1. And you'll see he calls him my anointed. And remember 105:15 on Psalms. Touch not my anointed, do my prophets no harm. Now, if he's anointed, be careful how you put your mouth on him. And I'm talking to different people if it applies to them, because look what happened with Miriam when she put her mouth on Moses. He is serious about his anointed, and he's not taking any poll. When he chooses them, you better respect him.
Yep, the same thing that we saw with David when he was running from Saul, and on 2 occasions, Saul was delivered into his hand where David could have killed him. And even the act of cutting a little corner off of Saul's robe caused David so much distress. He said, I can't raise my hand or touch God's anointed, including cutting the piece of the robe. And he used it to show Saul that he meant him no harm, but he beseeched God for his life. He didn't ask Saul for it. And David is one of the key examples in the Bible, as well as the ones you've named, where we see that when God appoints a ruler, it's not your place to assassinate, remove, et cetera, et cetera. It's simply something that we have to respect and understand that God's timing is not ours, his mind is not ours, and we just have to trust him. Let's go to Bobby in Ohio, and thank you so much for those scriptures. I pulled them up on my laptop, and I want to share a few more during the show here. Bobby in Ohio, thank you for calling today.
Thank you. My comment is about Congress, that it's not about the money. Someplace I heard that Sherrod Brown and he and his congressman buddies approved money for foreign countries to build a wall around their country. I'm talking specifically about Jordan for security, but then they won't do it for our own country, the USA. And I relayed a message to him yesterday by phone that that's disgraceful, and it should be brought to the limelight how hypocritical our congressmen are.
Yeah, it's not just there. It's also in Israel. We helped fund the wall that was built along Israel's border with Egypt because people from Africa were traveling to Egypt and then going on up and through into Israel. And they were doing it for economics, and they didn't want it to happen anymore, so they put a wall up there, and now they don't have any immigration from that side. That source of illegal immigration is no longer there.
Right. And thank you for the news. I think another one good thing about this situation might be that the public can't help but see how the major networks manipulate the news. It really is fake news and one-sided.
It is. I mean, and really, they just take the talking points. Like, I know I've mentioned this, but I just want to say, don't miss the program tomorrow because we're going to have that audio for you. It's a mashup of all of them. Right before President Trump made the Oval Office address, they came out and started saying it was a manufactured crisis. And they said that phrase over and over and over again because they're trying to drum it into the American psyche that this isn't real, it's manufactured, so that people won't support what is really common sense. As you've pointed out, Bobby, it works overseas, it works here too. Thank you for calling the show, and God bless. I want to also, I just have so much here. I mentioned the defiant landowners. I want to just give a little smidge of, so we're talking about on the border between Texas and Mexico. And, last year, the president actually secured funding for 33 miles of barrier. It was last March in 2017. And that work is supposed to be kicking into gear. And we've reported on that here on the show. I've talked about different areas where wall is being either shorn up, repaired, or built where there is no wall. And that's from the $1.5 billion that was allocated last year. But sometimes they have to get the land. And there's one person who's been very open about her opposition to a border wall going on her property. Her name is Cavazos. That's her last name, Mrs. Cavazos. She says she doesn't want to negotiate a deal. If she were offered $1 trillion, she would not put a border barrier on her property that she owns on the border with Mexico. Now, the suggestion, if you're just tuning in, welcome to the program. The suggestion is that we simply, say that, let's say her property, which borders the national line between Mexico and America, instead of putting it on that line where she won't give permission, we can't put it on Mexican property, so we have to come further in and put the border barrier where her property line ends and the easement begins between, utilities, etc., sidewalk. I have no idea what the terrain is around the front of her property, but the border wall would be there. For her to get into the interior of the U.S., she would simply enter at a port of entry. She would have every right to do so as an American citizen, but her land would be on the outside of the wall. Now, I actually don't think that would come to fruition, because I think at that point, if she realized that's what was about to happen, she would then negotiate, and, the government would get permission to utilize a teensy bit of her land on which to construct a wall. But there's a couple of other things, and that is the use of eminent domain, which conservatives traditionally oppose. But in this case, so the reason conservatives traditionally oppose eminent domain is because it normally is used for stupid things like shopping plazas and, any kind of pet project that some developer wants to put up. The real use for eminent domain is to put a highway or a road through, or something that's used by the public on a piece of land that is adjacent to fully developed commercial areas where, it's the only single family residence left. And so you need an easement to utilize some of that land. And, it's tricky stuff. But in this case, there's a valid reason for it, which means it would be fine to support it as a conservative without losing your principles on that. So as we're closing out this hour, I want to make sure and point you to our partnership for this week. And I just couldn't be more excited about Preborn, Mission Preborn, Preborn Ministries, the people who work there, the leader there, Dan Steiner, Roxy Lammergase, who came on the program yesterday with us. If you missed that, head over to urbanfamilytalk.com/Stacy or AFR.net and listen to that podcast. It was a fantastic interview with her. She was so knowledgeable and such a sweetheart for women who are abortion-minded. Really, someone who's working as the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. It's amazing to see what people can do when they dedicate themselves to something that they feel, this is for me. This is what God has for me. So, not too late for you to get in on this action and help us get to 2,500 ultrasounds provided. 877, let me start over again. 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or donate online at afr.net. I've already done so. It's super fast online. Or you can speak to our fantastic, fabulous, awesome, sweet, and very, very funny volunteers who are working the phones. 877-616-2396. I'm Stacy Washington. God bless, and good evening from the Heartland.
Urban Family Talk.
Hey, I'm Miki, co-host of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. I want to invite you to be part of our online chat community we've affectionately called The Churban. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to communicate in real time with the hosts of those programs and other Urban Family listeners. Find out what the talk is all about. Become a Churbanite at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm RTP. President Trump is on his way to McAllen, Texas, where he plans to tour the U.S.-Mexico border today. The commander-in-chief spoke on the White House lawn before departing, saying that some Democrats have agreed about the need for the security measures, but commented that the media will not report on it.
The media, which I call the opposition party, a lot of the media, in coordination with the Democrats, they're not talking about the Democrats folding. For instance, this morning a number of people came out and said you do need very strong border security, and that includes a wall or whatever it is. A number of Democrats said that, but people don't like to report on it.
From McAllen, Texas, Jared Halpern has more on the president's trip.
The president will spend the afternoon here in McAllen in the Rio Grande Valley, where border agents say illegal crossings are among the highest. The itinerary includes stops at a Border Patrol station, a roundtable on immigration, and a visit to the Rio Grande. President Trump has not convinced Democrats a border wall is necessary to deal with what he describes as a crisis. The president has suggested declaring a national emergency to build a border barrier without Congress, though that would likely spark a legal challenge, testing the presidential powers. In McAllen, Texas, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
A federal court decision involving Jack Phillips has his attorneys optimistic about the latest case against the baker. Chris Woodward has more.
On the same day, the U.S. Supreme Court announced in 2017 that it would hear Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. An attorney in Denver called Masterpiece Cake Shop and asked for a custom cake with a pink interior and a blue exterior to reflect and celebrate a so-called gender transition. Attorney Jim Campbell of Alliance Defending Freedom, the organization representing Phillips, talked about the case on Washington Watch.
That's something that he wasn't able to create because it would have conflicted with his religious beliefs. But they did indicate to the caller that they would create other cakes for them or sell them other items in the shop. Nevertheless, that person filed a complaint with the state of Colorado, and instead of realizing that that complaint was an obvious setup just intended to harass Mr. Phillips, the state of Colorado picked it up and made it its own complaint and is now bringing formal charges against Mr. Phillips.
Campbell went on to say that the state of Colorado is harassing Jack Phillips.
Once the state made it clear they were coming after Jack again, Jack had no choice but to go into federal court and ask the federal court to help him and to prevent the state from continuing to target and harass him.
Last week, a federal court refused a request from Colorado to have the lawsuit from Phillips dismissed.
It's hopefully an indicator that the court will ultimately see the case our way, but nevertheless, it's certainly an indicator that we're able to proceed with our case in federal court.
I'm Chris Woodward.
A Louisiana police officer is gunned down on her way to work. Jeff Manasso has more.
The Shreveport Times identifies the fallen officer as Shatari Payne, who police say was shot at least 4 times, including once in the head Wednesday night, in uniform and on her way to work.
Outside of praying for that family, pray for the police officers, SPD as a whole. Because the first responders, they're the ones who's out on the line of duty trying to take care of us every day.
Shreveport Councilman Jerry Bowman, no motive for the officer's killing. We're told a person's been detained for questioning. No word if police are looking for other suspects. A press conference is expected later today. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The state of Idaho plans to appeal a court ruling ordering a convicted sexual offender's sex change operation.
Adri Edmo would be the first prisoner in Idaho to get gender reassignment surgery while in state custody and only the second in the country. But the State Department of Corrections says in its court filing, the hardworking taxpayers of Idaho should not be forced to pay for a prisoner's gender reassignment surgery. Edmo is serving time for sexually abusing a child under 16. A federal judge ruled in favor of Edmo last month, saying the state's failure to address Edmo's serious medical needs amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com, on Facebook and Twitter, and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, the sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do. In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
My Democratic colleagues are operating purely on political spite directed at the President of the United States.
This is ridiculous and it's cruel. And it needs to end now, right now.
If he was going to get some border wall, I think the president would be there. Listen, the entire time these negotiations have been going on, it has been the president bringing offers to the Democrats. The Democrats have not one time made any counteroffer back.
Unity in the Republican Party. It's really a beautiful thing to see. I don't think there'll be any breakaway because they know we need border security and we have to have it.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving to Mission Preborn Ministries, providing ultrasounds free of charge. 100% of your donation goes to those ultrasounds and sharing the gospel with abortion-minded women, which is the most life-changing aspect of it. It's a 1-2 punch. The ultrasound that shows them there's a baby in there, and then the heartbeat that they can hear and all of the things that come along with that. And then the gospel, which some of these women have never heard before. And they hear it in a loving environment, and they come to know the Lord, and they realize that their life has changed, and it's about to change again because they're going to have a beautiful baby. And that baby's going to not only change their life, but change the trajectory, and that they're going to be able to make it, that they don't have to fear anymore because they now have a partnership with this pregnancy resource center for counseling and free diapers and clothes. And I'm talking about everything. Furniture. Sometimes they'll pay your rent if you're, due to be evicted. Sometimes they'll work you through the process of finding a permanent, stable place to live if you've been, thrown out of whatever your previous situation was. What they say is, we now are partners with you. What do you need? And often it can be so overwhelming to have someone offer for nothing in return. You just say, I'm going to take this plunge. I'm going to take this exciting experience. I'm going to go forward. And I'm going to trust God. I'm going to give him my life. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to have this baby. And in response to that, a group of strangers now want to pray with you. They're calling you. They're texting you. You don't have a bed. You don't have any. We are going to provide that. You need a stroller. You need a car seat. You need help with your utility bills because you got to keep those on. You can't be cold in the winter or, burning up in the summer. And these people just keep giving until it almost seems like it's unreal. It's not like a government program where you just walk in and you fill out, I'm single, I'm pregnant, I already have one kid, and then they do a formula, we owe you $774 a month, and then you go on your business, oh, here's a housing voucher, oh, here's this, here's that, and you just go on and let the government be your husband for the rest of your life. No, this is a completely different radical concept, which is, as a number of people have pointed out over the past few weeks and months, it's the way it's supposed to be. An extension of the church, operating in the community, doing the work that only the church can do well. Because these other sources, the government, what lacks there is accountability. There's just get into the system and start getting paid. There's no accountability on, well, when are you coming off? When are you going to start making some right choices? How can you begin to educate yourself so that you can live in a manner that would prevent you from making choices that put you in a predicament where you need all of this help? We love the babies. We want to save them, and then we want to see them grow and flourish. But that means the mom needs, like we said, the counseling, some prayer groups, a Bible study to start really learning how to be responsible. And there's nothing wrong with it. Wherever we find ourselves when we come to know the Lord, he's not got a sliding scale. Well, you came to me when you were here and you were really just good to go. You just needed salvation. No, we're all wretched sinners, all of us, me included, you included, saved by grace for some of us and others on that path. So what you're doing when you donate to Preborn is you're basically saying, let me accelerate that for one more woman, one more ultrasound. That'll do it. Let me accelerate this one more. It's like giving it a power boost. The $140 is giving 5 power boosts. So you can call 877-616-2396 or go to afr.net, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net. Before we get to, I have a couple audio bits for you. Before we get to that, I want to listen to Preborn Cut 0509. This drives the point home, and I love hearing these because it's real. These are not manufactured, these aren't paid testimonials. These are real women who love what happened to them so much that they want to share the information with, millions of strangers so that they can have the opportunity to show the impact that your $28 or your $50 or your $100 or your $140 will have on the life of one young woman and her baby, and really the whole family thereafter. It's 0509.
I actually found out I was pregnant October 2nd. I was happy but shocked. And I went outside to tell the kid's father, and he was like, "You can't afford this." And it's like my feelings was forced to go another way. And everything was kind of taken away from me at that moment. And so some told me, just go to the free pregnancy clinic and just, see if you're really pregnant. He didn't believe I was pregnant, and he didn't believe the baby was his. It was like anything to not want to have this baby. So I was sitting there and I seen the ultrasound and I just seen the baby. And at that moment, I wanted to keep the baby. She said, "There go the heartbeat." There was another life that was inside of me that's growing. And I said, I can't make this life suffer because of someone else's decision or because someone else. And I feel that's a blessing for me to be a great mother to someone, to teach them, because I haven't had that childhood. And I knew just from that point on, me having that baby, I'd be able to get far. The baby will be able to get far no matter what. No matter what comes my way, matters if the dad be there or not. And that changed my life. Just from that ultrasound picture, just me knowing that I'm going to keep my baby.
And you hear the emotional tone in her voice, but you also know that, so this is before. Now she's since had the baby, and the Pregnancy Resource Center that she partnered up with is helping her every step of the way, not just with the newborn, but with anything that the other children that she already has need. And I know there's a place for a social safety net. I've never said there's no place for it. I believe that we should have a social safety net. But I think we've gotten so far outside of what any constitutional mandate for a social safety net would provide, which the Constitution doesn't actually provide for that. But we've also gotten outside of what God's word says we're supposed to do. We are not supposed to hire people, which is what we do when we elect people, to take money from other people and give it to us. That is wrong. And that's what we've done. And Mission Preborn reverses that with the simple fact that it's 100% of what you give goes directly to the ultrasounds. The ultrasounds are not only provided free to the resource centers, but they're provided free to the women. So women don't have to pay to get these. They just go there, they get the pregnancy test. If it's positive, boom, they're offered an ultrasound. And in that moment of decision, especially when you hear her story, she was actually thinking, he's right, I can't afford a baby. Notice how he said, you can't afford it. Now, he's standing there live and able to work and take care, but he doesn't have any interest in it. But preborn goes around all of those considerations and circumstances. It's irrelevant who can afford what. It's, do you want to make the right decision? Make the right decision, and we'll make everything else happen, starting with the ultrasound, which you are funding, and you helped us meet our goal, and you're awesome. And so if you're just tuning in, we're talking about Preborn Ministries. The number to call is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or go to afr.net. We have the graphics up online. If you are watching one of the live streams, the number is there. It's on the screen. We'll go ahead and leave it up while I'm talking here through the rest of this segment. And we're periodically flashing it up so that you can have a chance to see the graphic and use either the phone number and speak to one of our wonderful volunteers, or go to afr.net. So that's awesome. Now, we also loaded up some slides, which we're going to get to in the third segment of the program. We're going to have these slides from the Department of Homeland Security about immigration. And we're going to be using these over the next few days and possibly weeks, depending on how long the border shutdown lasts, to demonstrate exactly what's going on, because the truth-telling that is required is not being done in mainstream media. But right now, I want to listen to Matthew Continetti of the award-winning Washington Free Beacon. He says the longer the government shutdown drags on, the more leverage the president has. It's number 2.
I noticed something interesting, and just in the hours since the speeches, President Trump and the Republicans continuing to talk about border security. Pelosi and Schumer, though, now shifting focus to the government workers. because maybe they're not on a solid political ground if it is them being intransigent over a fence or wall that they have voted for in the past. So you're right, there may be slightly cynically hoping to miss that first paycheck. I wonder, though, if it gets to a second paycheck. We already see people beginning to blame the Democrats or assign them some responsibility for the shutdown. More people assign President Trump responsibility, but that number assigning the Democrats responsibility is rising. That will continue to rise as the shutdown goes on. And I also have to wonder, here's Nancy Pelosi's restoration as Speaker of the House, and she's going to spend, what, her first month dealing with this and not all of that liberal wish list that she had wanted to pass legislation on and shift the debate in terms of liberal agenda. So I continue to believe the longer this drags on, the more leverage President Trump has.
He does. He's right. In fact, if you go back to what Erielle Davidson said in hour one about the common sense nature of the proposal that's being made, it's simply, it's not even, hey, let's build a brand new wall along all 2,300 miles. It's let's fill in the spots where there's no barrier. I mean, it's really, he's boiled this down to the smallest common denominator of what his original immigration stance was, which should have been passed immediately by the Republicans. It should have been immediately ushered through the House and taken to the Senate so that they could start twisting arms and doing whatever they needed to do. But they weren't able to get it together in the House. The Freedom Caucus and some other organizations were just working behind the scenes to make sure it couldn't happen. And I think that was back when the Never Trumpville folks were they still had their heyday going on. And it was really beneficial for them to act in this way because they didn't think the president really had the support of the majority of the American people. But when those numbers start coming back in from the surveys that showed that 88% of Republicans approve of President Trump and that 90+% of the women, like 95%, I think the survey said, 95% of Republican women approve of Donald Trump, that's when they started to realize if we don't support him, we're actually looking at not being reelected. And some of them didn't get reelected. The majority of it was due to attrition from retirements and ballot harvesting in California. We all know how that works. But it brings us to what the president's what his plan is here. And he's been very open about what he plans to do. And I just want to wait one more quick point before we get to this next piece of audio. So the president said a couple weeks ago before the shutdown, it was over the Christmas break, he said, well, if the government's shut down, I'll own it. I'll own that. And I know what he was doing was he was saying, I'm responsible, I'm the president. But what the Democrats have been able to do is to use that as a talking point and say, well, he said it's his fault. It's his fault. It's his shutdown. And he gets the blame for it. And American people are like, well, he did say he'd own it. It's his shutdown. But as time wears on and the president makes more and more of his points and hits the dastardly nature of what's going on at the southern border, more Americans will say, sure, he owns the shutdown, but the Democrats own part of it because they refuse to negotiate. It's one thing for them to say, we don't like what you're putting forward. But as Paris Denard said yesterday, if he asks me to bring the chicken to the get-together and I say, I don't know if I'm going to bring chicken, I'd rather bring potato salad. Well, now we're negotiating. But if he says, I know you're coming over and we're so excited to have you, but we're going to have a pretty large number of people and it's a potluck. And I say, yeah, I'm coming, but I'm not bringing anything. Well, that's going to be a non-starter, isn't it? Unless I'm sick or I just don't have anything. That's not the case with the Democrats. They are not negotiating. And they must negotiate. And I really don't think it's a negotiation when we're talking about the southern border and national sovereignty. I think they should be 100% on board. And if their constituents have a problem with it, they should say, well, you know what? It's about safety. We can't have dead Americans on our watch that are our responsibility, our fault because we didn't do the right thing. But they're too big of a cowards to even say that. Amazing. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Sonny Wilson, who's the director of Protect America First, right after these messages. Stay there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You can't squeeze more into 3 days, and we will in Washington, D.C. on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in June and in September. We're going to the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, the Korean and Vietnam Memorials, the Iwo Jima Memorial, the Arlington National Cemetery, the White House, that's outside, Jefferson Memorial, and the National Archives, and we're going to Mount Vernon on that Saturday of our tour. So much to see, so much to do, and it includes lectures and talks from Stephen McDowell, who will be our historian along the way. For more information on these June or September Spiritual Heritage Tours and the separate tour to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, for all the information on this, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Immigration will still be a big issue this year. That is why we need to be asking good questions, especially of our elected representatives. Michael Brown, in a recent column, asked 4 good questions that we might want to ask of those who are supposed to be trying to fix our immigration system. He admits that he is not an expert and has no agenda. He is genuinely asking these questions. He asks that if illegal immigrants are flooding our country, what's so controversial about building a border wall? I think this is a reasonable question. You can't seriously say that it costs too much when the federal budget this year will exceed $4.1 trillion. You can't say a wall or a steel fence won't work when we have many examples of them working in other countries, even in this country. Second, since when has anyone been able to force us to take in immigrants? He wonders why the way we treat those in a migrant caravan has now become a test of our national identity. We have a long track record of compassionate treatment of refugees. In fact, it reminds us the United States has a larger immigrant population than any other country. He also wonders what's so controversial about wanting to preserve our national identity. People come to America for a reason. If we cease to be America, there's no reason for people to come here. All we have to do is look at the growing Muslim influence in European countries to see how a country's culture can radically change. And finally, he wants to know why we can't make a path for citizenship with penalties for those who came in illegally years ago who have been working jobs, obeying laws, and contributing to the good of society. These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking our elected representatives. They deserve a thoughtful response. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Take Kirby and the Point of View team with you on the go with the Point of View app. Search for Point of View Radio at the Apple or Google Play stores.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. We are so excited to have our next guest come on and talk to us about, his organization that he's the founder of, which is Protect America First, and then also what's going on in the world of GOP politics here in the state of Missouri. Sonny Wilson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Stacey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I follow you, and I appreciate everything you've done out there for the conservative movement, and also for our gun rights out there also, leading that march.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you know what? So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Missouri with the Missouri GOP. It's the leadership race, I'm assuming. First of all, before we get to that, can you just tell us what Protect America First is, your organization, what that is, and why you started it?
Protect America First is a political action committee. We raise money to support grassroots candidates that actually like-minded, like Trump. It's candidates that we know that we can send into, D.C. or even local that will carry that agenda. And a lot of times those grassroots individuals, they don't have access to the money. So that's what I've been doing, is crisscrossing across America, raising money, helping each candidate I possibly can in any way, if that's helping them on the ground, fundraising, arranging different events for them. So that's what the Protect America First. But that all started. This is the race for the chair. Actually started last election when it came to the Senate race, because I was actually working for the state GOP at the time. I ran 4 counties I was a director for them. Where our objective was to help all the candidates fairly and evenly, and during that process, 3 weeks towards the end of the primary, the RNC suspended Rule 11, which allowed money to flow in to help Josh Hawley, which I voiced my opinion at the time. I said there's no reason for us to do this because it's going to cause fractions in the grassroots establishment and everything else. Because if we're supposed to mobilize help whoever is elected to defeat Claire, it made it very difficult. Once they did that, I resigned from the GOP because of that, as a protest. Because if we were supposed to, come out and embrace that movement of being fair elections, and then actually doing the opposite, so that's why I resigned at that point.
And what was your role at that point when you resigned?
I was a field director, so in 4 counties. So in those counties, I would organize canvassing, anything with any of those candidates in those counties. If it was judge races, state reps, all those. So what we had is we had offices throughout the state of Missouri that each one of us had our role. And we were funded by the RNC, our operation. But like I said, Rule 11, a lot of people didn't even know that rule even existed. But that rule was in place to prevent any influence in our primary races. And that's when they suspended it. And that's when the leadership, what we have currently still right now, they suspended it. They went to the state committee. The state committee said they wouldn't vote on it. Then they went to an executive committee, and that's 13 members of the state committee are on there, and had them suspend the rule, which actually they didn't even really need. It's the 2 individuals that we send to D.C. to represent us at the RNC. They're the 2 that actually had the power to do it. But the leadership decided to use them as a scapegoat, which I thought was wrong. They were playing politics with our state. They were influencing it. And what we have right now is going to be business as it was before, because the vice chair, the governor has nominated to be the chair. So nothing's going to change. And what we need is we need a new face. We need new leadership for the new GOP. Because if we're really going to have a tough race in 2020. Because right now, it's a statewide race in Missouri. We have only one person who's been elected for their position. That's Jay Ashcroft. We have a governor who was not voted for governor, attorney general, and so forth. So it's going to be tough.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because
we need to bring everybody together.
Right, and I think the reason this story, when I heard about what was going on, I thought it was kind of fascinating, is because there are similar things, power struggles, kind of schisms within the GOP, grassroots, and the establishment types going on across the country. And some of it was brought on by what has happened here is obviously you have Claire McCaskill, who was someone that the Republicans wanted to see gone from day one, but she had a pretty strong presence, and she was able to even defy, she was more popular in the year President Trump was elected probably than ever before, because liberals were looking to her to kind of be a check against the president. And she really did go against him on his judicial picks, et cetera, and that's why the race for her, the person to oppose her on the right, was so strong, right, Sonny? There were so many people here in Missouri who were like, I'm fit for this job. I can take her on. And so it was a local story, but I did notice people from outside the state kind of saying, what's going on in Missouri? Why is the RNC, interceding in your race? And I supported Josh Hawley. I was fine with him going against her. I thought he would be a good kind of foil to her being older and a grandmother with no kids at home and being really hardcore liberal, and him being younger, having small kids, and being a fresh face for the party, even though, he had literally just been elected statewide to be the attorney general. I was like, you know what? It's never perfect. It's never the person that you really, really want. But when Rule 11 was suspended and everybody started losing their stuffing, I saw what ends up happening when people from outside the state interfere is it makes people who would normally cobble together in a coalition despite their differences, they kind of take their ball and go home. And I saw a lot of people saying, well, I don't have to vote for him, because the RNC is picking for us, and that's not what we want here in Missouri. So what is your plan? If you're elected the head of the Missouri GOP, What would you do to change the situation or to kind of keep the local politics local?
Well, that's the thing, too, is that, I'm willing to stand up against the RNC because I resigned. I didn't have to. I could have went along, with the whole agenda. But if I'm going to tell everybody I'm going to do something fair and honest, and if I went along with it, that's why I had to resign. So I'm willing to do what it takes to resign. And I put my political career on the line by doing it. A lot of people looked at me and said, you're creating political suicide here. And I said, you know what, I really don't care because I'm doing what's right. And at any cost, you need, if it's right, it's right. You need to do it. And as an example, I need to step for my children. I have 4 boys. If I tell them you need to do the right thing, then, I have to lead by example. And the thing that, about the fractions they caused by doing that, I came around and I even supported Josh. He was not the candidate because once I resigned from the GOP, I worked in Cortland Pike's campaign. I was his campaign chairman, to prove my point. And we lost. Josh won large numbers. But when I left there, I went to Arizona and I worked on Sheriff Joe Arpaio's campaign for his Senate race. And after that, that's when we formed Protect America First. And I even came back here and did fundraising for Josh Hawley and actually gave him a check. And, to show the people out there that, it could be a tough, bitter primary, but we have to come together. You got to lick your wounds, and we got to fight together. And that example right there alone, I could show the people across the state that, hey, look, we have a tough primary. We need to work together. And that's one thing I know I can do is bring these different factions together and build a nice big coalition that we can bring a new face to the GOP, a new look, because it is time for it. A lot of them have to realize this is Trump's GOP. And that's what we're going to carry across the line. And that's how I'll be able to work with the establishment and the grassroots. Because I do that currently right now. I work with both circles. And that's what I can do.
So who are you running against?
Kay is actually the vice chair right now. And she's on the state committee.
Who?
And it's just us two right now as I know of.
Who did you say? I think the connection was a little weak there. Who is it?
Oh, okay. Kay Hoplander. She's the vice chair. She's with Todd Graves. So it's Todd Graves is the chair, and then Kay is the vice chair. The governor picked her, and it's just a nomination. He doesn't have any ability to actually put her in place. The state committee will be the ones to vote on it.
So it's not regular citizens who are just running around like on normal elections.
Right.
This is kind of an internal process where you have to be on the committee in
order. There's 68, and those 68 are the ones who vote.
Okay.
And that'll actually be at the end of this month on the 26th. We'll adjourn in Jeff City, and that's when the voting process will start. So the nominations, someone within the state committee will nominate Kay, and then someone will nominate me, and then we'll have a runoff. And whoever gets the majority wins. And at that point, that individual will take the leadership immediately.
So how do you contrast yourself against her? Obviously, she's got some political connections if she was appointed by the governor for the vice chair position. How do you contrast yourself against her?
Well, we had a problem in the primary, Rule 11. Kay was one of those votes. She was on the executive committee. So we already know that if the RNC wants to come in, she's going to go along with it. Also, the other thing is, too, we did our research, too, and we can't find anything her supporting the president. So I have been out there championing the president the whole time, and there's a difference. I am definitely a Trump enthusiast, supporter. I can't say so much for Kay. There's nothing, everybody has their opinion if they're to support the president or not. But I believe if you're going to take the leadership role of the GOP for the state of Missouri, you think you'd have an enthusiastic person that would have our icon right now is Trump. He's our golden, he's our ticket. This is how we're going to take over and continue to take victory across the line here in the state. So there's a difference. And also, too, is that part of the chair's responsibility is raising money for the state, and I have been doing that. And that's the thing is, too, Stacey, is that I was probably unique in the position of any sheriff, is that I have been involved into the lowest part of the ground game, knocking doors, organizing events, and, even raising money. So I have a lot of experience on all levels.
Well, it sounds like it's going to shape up to be a pretty interesting race. It'll be among the committee members they're the ones who will actually cast the deciding votes. I wanted to wish you the best with it, and thank you for coming on today to kind of explain the inner workings.
Thank you for having me on, and like I said, I appreciate what you do. You keep it up, okay?
Thank you. I will. I'm just doing the best with what I've been given, using my resources, and I think that's what you're doing, and I'm excited about the prospects. Thank you for coming on today and explaining the situation.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sonny Wilson, Director of Protect America First. Wonderful to have him on the show today. I think, so when I was at the rally last weekend, I had a friend approach me and say, you've got to interview Sonny Wilson. Here's what's going on. And he kind of gave me like the Cliff's Notes. And I said, you know what, I do want to have him on the show, because I think if you're listening to that and you're hearing how it works at the state level for the committee, for your state level Republican Party and the committee, kind of workings, every state's not the same, but you can kind of get an idea. And maybe you're listening to this and you've got some extra time on your hands. Maybe you're completing a project or you're completing a role, another volunteer organization, and you're moving on. It'd be great to have Bible-believing Christians going into the state committees for the Republican Party. And the reason I'm stressing that here after this interview is because this is a situation. We have a lot of people who know everything about the Republican Party platform, but they don't know as much about God's Word, or they're not as in tune to the biblical worldview as we would like them to be. And in order to have a functioning political apparatus that reflects the people that it's supposed to, represent, you have to have those people present in that process. And this is the part of rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And it's the reason why I bristle so much when I have someone say, well, politics doesn't matter. Well, of course it does. Of course it matters. It shouldn't be everything that you think about. It shouldn't be the only thing that we care about, but certainly it matters. And so we all have a role to play. For some people, it's just that you're going to vote every single time there's an election, and you're going to tell your friends who you're voting for and why. You're going to tell your family members. You may not convert anybody or convince anybody, but you're just going to say, I'm a Bible-believing Christian, and you know it. You've seen my life. You know that I'm not a fly by the wind type person, and this is who I'm voting for this go round. And then you go and you actually vote. And if there's a chance to make phone calls from your house or send emails, you do that. That's what many of us are called to do. Others are like Sonny, where he's actually going up against what he feels to be an improper structure in the state GOP, and he's going in there to right the wrongs that he feels are present. And that's his role. In addition to, he named off fundraising and a bunch of other things he's been able to do. In addition to starting companies and stuff, he has an impressive resume. So my question to you is, what time do you have to dedicate to this? And if it's a minimal amount of time, and I totally get that, children, family, those obligations work. They come before political aspirations or volunteering. But if you have some time, is there something you could be doing at the state level? Committeeship, committee man, committee woman, block captain, precinct captain. Maybe you're just helping to organize the annual picnic and inviting people to come out and fellowship so we have some community. And if nothing else, just doing the basic role of citizen, highest office in the land, is that you vote every single time, and that you make those phone calls when our legislators get out of control. Everyone can do those things. So I want you to be encouraged hearing him talk about what he's doing. Let's all get involved and do the part that we can do to make sure that our government is functioning properly, even if we're talking state level, which is important too. A lot of your tax burden is determined at the state level. Make sure that you're involved. So now I want to get to President Trump saying what he'll do if he doesn't win the government shutdown right after these messages. Stay right there. We'll take calls if you want. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Stay right there.
Can solid teamwork building principles apply to all of life? Here's Tony Dungy, author of The Soul of a Team, with today's uncommon moment.
I remember a time when the Colts were preparing for the college draft and needed to choose between two defensive players. One was big, strong, and dominant on the field. The other had great speed but was undersized. Both were exceptional college players. Yet we had some questions about the first player's attitude and commitment. So we brought in 3 of his college teammates and asked each of them, if we brought you here, which of your teammates would you want to have on our team as well? None of them named the player we were considering. We ended up drafting the second player, and he was a good choice. When you're selfless, you'll earn the respect of your teammates.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of The Soul of a Team, from Tyndale House. More at CoachDungy.com. That's CoachDungy.com.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called Tune In. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
The Awakening on Urban Family Talk.
You know, a bunch of people who thought Obama was the Messiah. There are a lot of people who are kind of treating Trump like that.
Bishop E.W. Jackson.
Folks, I'm not looking for a Messiah. I've already got one. His name is Jesus, the Son of the living God. We put our ultimate trust in him. All other human beings are fallible.
The Awakening, weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk.
Securing America.
The Army is gearing up for Combined Resolve 11, Part 2 in Germany. Soldiers spent 2 weeks during the first phase of the biannual exercise engaging mock enemy aircraft. First Sergeant Edward Jervis was part of the drills.
So it's a big multinational effort, all right? The importance of the OPFOR and us maintaining our abilities and our skills really improves everyone's readiness across NATO on both sides.
First Lieutenant Daniel Camacho says they also practice recovering downed aircraft.
So, you know, we always have a cycle of new guys coming in, old guys leaving. So we had a younger team coming out here in some ways. And so here we actually had the opportunity of getting them that experience and seeing what it's like doing a realistic scenario.
The soldiers worked alongside more than 5,000 troops from 16 nations. The second phase of Combined Resolve 11 kicks off next week. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Are you now going to decide to declare a national emergency? Is that your only option left?
I have the absolute right to declare a national emergency. The lawyers have so advised me. I'm not prepared to do that yet, but if I have to, I will. I have no doubt about it, I will. I have the absolute right to declare. This was passed by Congress. So when you say was it passed by Congress, it was. Other presidents have used it, some fairly often. I have the absolute right to declare a national emergency. I haven't done it yet. I may do it. If this doesn't work out, probably I will do it. I would almost say definitely. This is a national emergency.
Why haven't you declared a national emergency already?
Because I would like to do the deal through Congress, and because it makes sense to do it through Congress. But the easy route for me would have been call a national emergency and do it. And I will tell you, this is a tremendous crisis at the border.
It is. It's a total crisis. So let's listen to Sarah Huckabee Sanders talking about the Democrats living in denial, and then we'll get to that slideshow presentation, which you can find at Politico. I posted it at Stacy on the Right, the page on Facebook. But here's what's important. If you're watching the live stream, you'll see the slides that I'm about to put up for you. And if you don't watch via live streaming when you're one of our terrestrial listeners, welcome to the show. We really appreciate your ears. And you can just click through online to any one of our channels there, Twitter, any of those, and you'll see the link to Politico, which that's where we got the slides. They're directly from DHS. DHS gave them to Politico. Politico published them. We're using this opportunity to share the information as well. So let's first listen to the press secretary for the Trump administration, Sarah Sanders, number 4.
It's actually more than that. The president's fighting not just for the wall, but he's fighting for border security. He's fighting for the protection and the safety of every American citizen. And the fact that the Democrats want to continue to live in denial and pretend that things that are coming across this border that bring harm to people in this country aren't happening is frankly sad. It's ridiculous. And I think you saw that on full display last night in their response to the president. I can't find a single other reason other than that they want to fight this president on every single thing. They care more about playing politics than they do about protecting Americans. I think what we saw last night was frankly pathetic excuse. If this is the face and the future of the Democrat Party, I think things are looking really good for Republicans. But what our focus here is making sure that we get border security. We've laid out a very clear proposal. In fact, in that proposal, we listed things that the Democrats wanted us to do, demonstrating our willingness to work together with Democrats. They said they didn't want a concrete wall, so we made it a steel barrier. They requested specific types of technology to be included at ports of entry. We put that in our proposal. We have shown our willingness to work with them. Now they have to show that they're willing to do their jobs and do something other than fight this president.
So let's be perfectly clear here. Everything that's going on at the southern border is of the nature of a crisis because it's uncontrolled. Controlled immigration brings about assimilation and benefits the nation. Uncontrolled immigration brings about death. And what death am I talking about? Well, 20 people, I should say their bodies, found at the southern border. And they're blaming it on, they're blaming it on gang violence from Mexico. It's a Grisly Mexican gang battle near the U.S. border leaves 21 dead, not just 20, 21. And there were 17 bodies found burned. President Trump is visiting McAllen, Texas today, and it's about 56 miles from Ciudad Miguel Ailman across the Rio Grande River. He's trying to drum up support for the border wall and, a lot of illegal crossings, et cetera, et cetera. One of the bodies that was recovered from this horrible incident is wearing the remains of a baseball cap bearing the letters and logo of the local Gulf cartel. Others wore the remains of bulletproof vests with the same insignia. Turf wars between the Gulf cartel and its chief rivals, the Zetas, have been a key source of bloodshed over recent years in Tamaulipas, one of the most violent states in Mexico. Luis Rodriguez, a spokesman for state police, said in a statement that it appeared gunmen from the Gulf cartel had fought with members of the Northeast cartel, a group that actually split off from the Zetas. Irving Barrios, the state's attorney general, said in a radio interview that authorities found semi-automatic weapons and bulletproof vehicles at the site. The area is greatly fought over by traffickers of arms and drugs, as well as those who help illegal aliens cross into the United States. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in Mexico during years of fighting between security forces and cartels, warring over drug trafficking, extortion rackets, and the exploitation of illegal aliens. Did you hear what I just said there? This problem is fueled by the desire to push drugs and illegal aliens into America. It's no secret that people who live in South America believe that because they share, the hemisphere with us, that they are owed an opportunity to live in America. Truth be told, I believe if they took a survey and it was an honest survey and there was nothing for anybody to lose by telling the truth, that most people in these war-torn, gang-infested countries would admit that they would prefer that the United States just take over the entire thing. South America and all of America up to Canada. And some Canadians would probably prefer that we run their area, even though they're hardcore, dyed-in-the-wool socialists. And they can't get an MRI or a CT to save their lives, literally. They want to be here, and they would prefer it if we would bring law and order down there. They would love it. What they have now is chaos, murder, bloodshed, and an utter lack of, they don't have any desire to live where they come from. They want to live here. And so, I don't blame them. If you look at the vistas from the countries that they're coming from, these are beautiful countries with stunning coastlines and just, but the countries themselves are not just poorly run, they're pits. They're actually hellish situations where there's not enough food, there's not enough water, and there's no safety. There's no point in starting a business because the drug cartel is going to take anything that you create, that you make. They're enslaved to these people. And why? Because we here in our country, we have our whole breakdown of the family, and everybody's scratching their chins and looking off furtively in one direction or the other, trying to figure out what's going on. It's because American men are making less than women. That's what Tucker Carlson just posited, and I'm sure that plays a role. Social scientists are rebutting what Tucker Carlson said by saying, well, the thing is, it has nothing to do with that. It doesn't have anything to do with arbitrary choices made by people in America. Yes, it does. If you choose to have sex out of wedlock and be a little, the acronyms abound online. You know what I'm talking about. If you choose to live that lifestyle, then you're saying, I'm going to have kids out of wedlock and I'm not going to be a part of the American dream. I'm not going to be a part of the middle class. Because as soon as you start having kids out of wedlock, that's the path that you're on. And there are ways to, you're already on that path. You already have kids out of wedlock. There are ways to still make it in America. But the fastest track to success in America involves not having any children until you're married, graduating from high school, and working. You can't be a criminal. You can't have a whole bunch of kids. You have to do it in those three things. If you just do those three things, you pretty much know you're not going to be poverty stricken. Now, are you going to be Jeff Bezos? Are you going to be a 1%er? Who knows? Who knows what you're going to do? What are you planning on doing? What goals have you set? What are you praying for? I don't know what you're going to do. But the idea that has nothing to do with what fuels the drug trade. They're not sending drugs in here and forcing people to take them. People are choosing to take drugs to get away from their life, to get away from the horrible decisions they've made. And the Democrats aren't helpful. They actually are now running a party that exists solely to make sure that no one has to pay consequences for the wrong-headed actions they've taken. Had a kid out of wedlock? Democrats say just have an abortion. Like that doesn't have its own ramifications. Are you a criminal? Democrats say, oh, you know what? Even if you're a criminal, we'll make sure you still have voting rights and you shouldn't have to go to prison for very long. Just, you got problems with your taxes. Democrats, just evade your taxes. Just do whatever you feel like you're doing. And if you're a Democrat and you're listening to this show and you're like, I don't believe that, well, then stop voting for the Democrats. Stop acting like you can vote for people who believe this stuff, but that doesn't mean you don't believe it. You're condoning it. You're voting for them. They believe it. You believe it. An unborn baby is not alive, but an illegal alien has more rights than you and I do. That's what the Democrats believe. A person who's mentally ill and they call themselves transgendered has the right to make everyone in their world act like they're mentally ill too, rather than that person getting counseling. We have to change all of our laws and societal norms to suit a tiny population of mentally ill people. That's what the Democrats believe, and that's what they want you to act out. It's just enraging that people don't see the connection between so much drugs pumped into this country. It should be that they bring the drugs to this country and they can't find anybody to buy it. It should be that they bring the drugs here, they're trying to get it into the communities, and there's just like nobody interested in taking any drugs. And they're like, well, we maybe should ship these drugs further south or something. But there's money here, there's disposable income here, and there's plenty of people who want to buy and take drugs. And then we're wondering, well, why are there such high murder rates in the inner cities of America? Well, first of all, they're run by the Democrats. And second of all, you have a lot of familial breakdown. And even for families that are intact, where the kids are still getting caught up in this drug, the opioid epidemic, what's going on there? Who gets to take some responsibility there? I have a heart that bleeds absolutely for any family that's lost a child or a spouse or someone in their family to the opioid epidemic. Absolutely. But we have got to start acknowledging all parts, all facets of these issues. Nobody gets off the hook. The Democrats say if you make mistakes, we'll legislate you out of them. We as Americans should be saying anyone can make a mistake. Anyone can come back from that mistake, but we don't want to be a nation of enablers. By having an open border, we're basically saying to these South American countries, our laws say you can't come here illegally, but you can. Just snatch up somebody's kid and drag that kid 1,400 miles till they're basically so dehydrated that they'll die once they get here. But that's the way that you get into our country, is drag a kid with you. Don't let the kid go when you get in the country or treat them like a person. Sexually traffic them. That is what these laws, not being properly applied, and the intransigence and obstruction of the Democrats are reaping at our southern border. And they are responsible. Anyone who advocates for open borders, who doesn't want a concrete barrier, anyone who doesn't want to see true law and order existing on our border, you're advocating for that human smuggling, human trafficking, sex trafficking, small children being raped, and all of the Americans who've lost family members to illegal alien crime. People who've lost their businesses and their livelihood because their identities have been stolen. And by the time they can clean everything up, their whole business life is trashed. All of these crimes going on because we're letting people in here who, you know, God bless folks who live in these war-torn countries who want a better life, but they're not owed anything by America. And I know that just what I've just said there, some person is already furiously typing like that cat meme. They're on their computer and they're just mad to the high heavens that I've said these things. How dare you equate the Democrats with lawlessness? It's not about me daring. I'm just speaking the truth here. If we want to see something different in describing what the Democrats are and who they are, who they represent, illegal aliens, refugees, and lawbreakers, if we want that to change, then the Democrats have to change who they're representing. They have to change who their primary constituents are. They have to change the legislation they're putting forward. Right now, they're putting forward gun control legislation to confiscate the actual back of a long gun, the part that puts it in the crook of your arm that makes it easier to control. Then when people are accidentally killed because guns are less easy to control in their normal use and operation, they'll say, well, we have to confiscate the gun. Do you notice the pattern here? We want to take all your guns. We want to open up the southern border to the drug cartels. We think MS-13 has a divine spark. And oh, by the way, you don't need to be able to defend yourself. Who cares what the Constitution says about the border or about your right to own and operate a firearm? That's who the Democrats are right now. It's not me saying that's who they are. It is who they are. And so I thought it was interesting when Erielle Davidson said that there was this, there's a lot of strife in the Democrats right now because they have the new breed of people coming up who've been educated in the K-12 public education system run by the Marxist teachers. And they've been taught from the time they were knee-high to a grasshopper that America's a horrible place, even though everybody wants to live here. And that, you know, America needs to do everything that it can to make sure to welcome everybody in because of our horrible history on civil rights, yada, yada, yada. And these lies have been taught to kids that socialism is better than capitalism, that what's really needed is more command and control structure. The government needs to be even bigger than it is. And through all of that, they're surprised. Nancy and Chuck and all of them are surprised that the new flock of incoming congressmen and elected people, they're young, they're idiots, and they're Marxists. Alexandria Cortez, college educated at a respectable American higher educational institution. She doesn't know anything about government or economics. Literally nothing. But she looks cute dancing on videos, so she got sent to Congress. Don't blame the messenger for telling the truth. When Americans, especially those of us who have a Christian worldview and trust God's word, we believe in Jesus Christ, we've given ourselves to him, as soon as we stop voting for the Democrats and start really paying attention to where we're putting what is due Caesar, we'll see some changes. All right. If you're upset, sorry, not sorry, but God bless from the heartland. I'll be back with you tomorrow.